Caitlin Clark still working her way back from a back injury. No Aaliyah Boston, and Seattle's got two giants in Dominique Malona and Awa Pham ready to bang inside all night, as well as dynamic guard Flau'jae. But by the end of the night, the Fever didn't just win. They broke 14 records. 11 of them belonged to Caitlin Clark herself. And one of those records was untouched for decades. Some originally set even before she was born. This is the full breakdown of the night the record book got rewritten and how Caitlin Clark just shut down all the noise. Comment CC record breaker to show your love for Caitlin through the shot clock. Side deep 3 left wing. Good. Caitlin Clark, a Fever franchise record 41 points, and the Fever lead by 3 with 38 seconds to go. Timeout Seattle. Let's talk about the injury report because this one had Fever fans nervous before the ball even got tipped. Aaliyah Boston out with a right lower leg injury. Caitlin Clark still working her way back from her own back issue, not even fully cleared to go full minutes. So, Indiana's walking into this game without their starting center and without a full version of their franchise player. And now somebody's got to figure out answers in the paint against the Seattle team built to punish exactly that kind of weakness. See you tomorrow. Let's go. Dubs in the chat, baby. Come on, Bever's career high. Period. Dubs in the chat. See y'all at the same time tomorrow. And that's the part that made this scary. Seattle's got Dominique Malona, 6 feet 6 inches, and Awa Pham, 6 feet 4 inches. Both of them ready to go to work inside all night long. These aren't just tall bodies standing around either. Malona can score with her back to the basket and crash the glass. And Pham can step out and knock down threes too, which stretches Indiana's defense thin in two directions at once. Without Boston patrolling the paint, that matchup problem doesn't just get harder, it turns into the kind of thing that decides the whole game. So, who's left to hold the fort? Michaela Timpson, a sophomore, getting her first career start with barely any warning. Picture that for a second. You find out you're starting against one of the most physical front lines in the league, and you've got hours to prepare instead of days. KK, for those who are not teammates of Caitlin, what does it feel like to watch her be sort of this orchestrator of crazy moments? Just greatness right here, you know? I mean, man, she does some crazy stuff out there on the court, man. You know, of course, her signature logo threes, the way she can get to her shots and just being able to, you know, set her screens and get her open. You know, we trust her so much here on the Fever, and I mean, she's just a great player overall. You know, she's always, you know, talking to me, making sure, you know, hey, come set me a screen, you know, but I'm willing to do whatever I can for her, you know, on the court, and just great player overall. Monique Billings also got thrown into a bigger role than usual, stepping up as the veteran who had to bring stability, while everyone else adjusted on the fly. The coaching staff wasn't just worried about scoring either. They were worried about who was going to box out, who was going to rotate on defense, and whether the Fever had enough bodies to survive foul trouble. Then there's Flau'jae Johnson on the perimeter for Seattle, a guard who can get out in transition and turn a missed shot into 3 points in the blink of an eye. So, the question walking into tip-off was simple. Could Indiana really survive Seattle's size and speed without Boston anywhere on the floor? Early on, the margin looked thinner than anyone wanted to admit, and the crowd could feel it the moment Seattle's first big swing hit the scoreboard. Caitlin, a career-high performance on a minutes restriction. I mean, just how comfortable were you out there? You seemed like you were in a flow from the start. Yeah, just thought I was aggressive from the start, and you know missed a shot, came back with make the next. I knew my team needed me to step up with AB out, but just proud of this group. I down 8 I think with 4 minutes to play. So just some true resiliency, but we got another one tomorrow. So this is great. But let's move on. Before we even get to Clark, let's talk about 3 records that got broken by her own teammates on the same night in the same building. Start with Kelsey Mitchell because she came out throwing haymakers from the opening tip. She dropped 17 points in the first quarter alone. And that's the most points anybody's ever scored in a single quarter in Fever history. Not just this season, not just this year ever. She was pulling up from deep attacking closeouts, getting to her spots like the game was already decided before Seattle even settled in defensively. Boring offenses in the history of the league. Here is Clark. Bounces inside for Billings. Cut off there by Vaughn. Billings into Mitchell and she gets the friendly bounce. What a great by Seattle. They'd rather get back and load their defense, and a heavy dose of Caitlin Clark here so far. And Mitchell finishes at the rim. 45. And her night didn't stop there. Mitchell hit at least 3 three-pointers in her 9th straight game, which puts her second all-time in WNBA history for that streak. The only player ahead of her is Clark, who ran off 10 straight games like that back in 2024. So Mitchell's chasing history set by her own teammate, and she's right on her heels. This game also gave Mitchell her 14th career 30-point game, and it stretched her streak of scoring in double digits to 40 straight games. That's not a hot week. That's not a hot month. That's a player who shows up every single night and gets her points no matter what the defense throws at her. Set. Just a bad read, but Mitchell makes up for it. So, she moves on to the next play as fast as anybody in the league. That's her 3rd triple. Now, shift over to Mikayla Timpson because her story hits different. She's thrown into her first career start with Boston out, and barely any time to prepare for it. No easing into the moment, no working her way up the bench first. She's just handed the keys and told to go compete against a Seattle front line built to bully people inside. Caitlin, for a KK's first career start, what is it like to see the progress and growth of her as a teammate, especially against the Storms? Big kicks. Yeah, I mean this is a tough first start. Like they're really good, they're long, they're athletic, they're fast, they score in transition, and she stepped up to the challenge, but I thought like she kind of touched on it like she's put in the work. Like she's in the gym, she wants to get better. She's, willing to learn. She works with Rob, our player development, all the time. So, just really proud of her, and the confidence she now has in herself and then everybody has in her, she can go out there and make plays. She's probably the most athletic player I've ever played with and one of the most athletic players I've ever seen. And it's fun to kind of see that come to light, and everybody knows what she's capable of, and she's really just scratching the surface. So, can't wait to see where it takes her. And she didn't back down from it. Timpson finished with 8 points and 9 rebounds, and 8 of those boards came on the offensive glass. Think about that for a second. Almost every rebound she grabbed came by chasing her own team's misses and fighting bigger, more experienced bodies for the ball. Those are hustle plays. Nobody's cutting that up for a highlight reel. Nobody's posting that clip with music over it. But that's the stuff that wins basketball games when the shots aren't falling. That performance put Timpson 3rd all-time in Fever history for offensive rebounds in a single game. 3rd all-time as a sophomore in her first career start. That's not a small thing. That's a player walking into the toughest possible situation and immediately putting her name next to players who've been in the league for years. 3rd most offensive rebounds yourself. At a key moment. And that's really the point here, because this isn't just about stat lines looking good on a graphic. This is a player getting thrown into the fire with no warning, no Boston to lean on, and instead of shrinking, she plays the physical, unglamorous style of basketball that actually wins games. That's the kind of moment that tells you everything about a player's makeup. And it happened before anybody even started talking about Clark's night. So let's add it up. Mitchell's 17-point quarter, that's 1 record. Her 9-game streak with 3 threes, that's 2. Timpson's offensive rebounding night, that's 3. 3 separate Fever records. And Caitlin Clark hasn't even entered the conversation yet. Because what Clark did after that wasn't just a great stat line. It reached back 30 years into a record that outlasted entire careers, and it belonged to one of the greatest players who ever picked up a basketball. 45 points. That's the most points by a Fever player in a game in franchise history. I know you're used to making history, but what does that one mean to you? I mean, it's cool. I don't really care. And I know what I'm capable of, and I know what this team is capable of, and it's my job to help us win and be the best team in the WNBA. And I don't think we're there yet. So, it's my responsibility to help us get there. So, we'll keep working. Well said. Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks. Clark's night wasn't just a career high. It reached back and touched a record that had been standing since before she was even born. Start with the obvious number. Clark dropped a career-high 45 points. And that broke her own single-game scoring record for the Fever. Not a record she took from someone else. Her own record, the one she already owned. And she smashed right through it a second time. That's a player who keeps raising her own ceiling every time you think she's hit it. But that's not all, because buried in that scoring outburst is a pace record that might be the wildest number of the whole night. Clark's now the fastest player in WNBA history to hit 200 career three-pointers, and she got there in just 74 games. Think about how fast that actually is. Some players take entire careers to get to 200 threes. And Clark blew past it. On top of that, she now sits 5th all-time in Fever history for threes made, which means one single game bumped her up the franchise list for good. Foot Clark with her 3rd steal of the first half. It's 4-on-3. Clark the hesitation. Clark on the drive. Harris. Clark. Oh yes. Now, let's talk about where her 45 points ranks around the whole league this season. It's 2nd overall, only behind Marina Mabrey's 53-point outburst. So, Clark didn't just have a big night for herself. She had one of the 2 biggest scoring nights anybody's put up in the entire WNBA this year. And she didn't need to chase that number by jacking up shots either because the assists kept piling up right alongside the points. That's a great lane line drive. Clark behind the backside, Steven. Knocks down a 3. Got a feeling, Pat. Just have a feeling on defensive fouls from here. A real opportunity for Indiana. Clark with 15 points here on the Knights. Oh, that's where things get historic. Clark now has 4 career games with at least 30 points and 10 assists. And here's the part that should stop you. The rest of the WNBA combined, every player, every season, every year the leagues existed, has only combined for 4 of those games, too. Clark alone matches the entire history of the league by herself. That's not a stat that sounds good on paper. That's a stat that breaks the way you think about what's possible in a single game. We have had entire games in the WNBA without this much scoring. Clark answers. It's a good old-fashioned shootout here in Indy. Again, the poise and composure experience of Heidi. Clark and a triple. Indiana trying to get Clark the ball and they turn it over. Johnson with the steal. Johnson had it wrenched away. Clark knocked it off and Johnson. It's Fever basketball. And then comes the first that's never happened before. Not once, not in 30 years of WNBA basketball. Clark finished with 40 points and 10 assists in the same game. 30 years of players, 30 years of legends passing through this league. And nobody, not one player, ever put together a 40-point 10-assist game until Clark did it against Seattle. That's the kind of record that doesn't get broken again next month. That's the kind that sits alone for a while. She also extended her own streak of 20-point 10-assist games, adding another marker to a pile that already had her name written all over it. At this point, the box score starts looking less like one game and more like a highlight reel of records stacked on top of each other. What started as just another WNBA game quickly transformed into a record-breaking spectacle. Caitlin Clark delivered a performance that will be remembered for years, finishing the night with 67 points created, a statistic that combines her personal scoring with the points she set up for teammates through assists. That number didn't just set a new standard, it toppled a record that had stood for 2 full decades. Diana Taurasi, widely regarded as one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball, set the previous mark of 65 points created on August 10, 2006. That record survived through entire eras of the league, multiple generations of stars, and remained untouched for 20 years. Taurasi set that mark before Clark had even started playing basketball seriously. It took this one night in Indiana to finally bring it down. With this performance, Clark has now set 9 individual records this season, bringing her total to an astonishing 12, and we're just past the midway point. Clark didn't do this alone. Kelsey Mitchell was right there beside her throughout the entire game, and together they made history as a pair. The duo combined for 75 points, the most ever scored by a tandem in Fever franchise history. Both players finished with 30-point games on the same night, giving them the most 30-point games by a duo in WNBA history, a mark no other pair of teammates has ever reached. While Clark was rewriting records that touched Taurasi in 30 years of league history, Mitchell was scoring right alongside her, ensuring this wasn't a one-woman show. It was 2 players putting up numbers nobody's ever seen from a pair of teammates before. Every single time Clark walked to the bench, Fever fans grew nervous, and for good reason. The lead they had just built would start shrinking fast. It happened over and over like clockwork. By the 3rd quarter, the whole arena knew the pattern. It started fast, though, in a good way. Mitchell opened the game by scoring 17 points in the first quarter alone, and Indiana jumped out to a cushion that looked comfortable early. But comfortable didn't last long. The second Clark sat down to catch a breather, Seattle started clawing right back into it. That was the story of the entire game. Indiana builds a gap, Clark sits, and the gap shrinks right back down before she even gets a chance to check back in. Seattle had a clear plan. Maona and Magbeger combined for 44 points between them, exactly the size advantage everybody worried about before the game even started. They were getting deep post position, drawing fouls, cleaning up misses, and doing all the damage in the paint that Indiana couldn't stop without Aaliyah Boston available. But this wasn't just a two-player problem for Seattle. Their entire starting five scored in double figures, meaning Indiana's defense wasn't just dealing with two big bodies inside, it was getting stretched thin across the entire floor. Guard to guard, possession to possession. The fourth quarter turned into a straight-up battle. Both teams kept trading buckets, either able to build enough separation to put it away. Every time Indiana answered with a score, Seattle would come right back down and match it. This was the kind of stretch where the whole building gets loud on every single possession because nobody knows which way it's going to break. Then Indiana's defense finally locked in when it mattered most. Seattle was held to just 19 points in the final frame, a significant shift after leaking points all night long. That's when the Fever finally looked like the team that was supposed to win this game from the start. Monique Billings came up with a block that swung momentum right when Seattle was trying to get back in it. Lexi Hull picked up 3 steals that turned Seattle possessions into fast break points the other way. Those aren't the plays that make the highlight package first, but they're the reason Seattle couldn't finish what they started. Then the final minute happened, the kind of stretch that decides how people remember the whole night. Easy Eye Magbeger drove hard to the rim, looking for the bucket that would have tied things right back up. Clark met her at the rim and blocked it clean. Then, like it was scripted, Clark came right back down the floor and buried the go-ahead 3, the kind of shot that just ends any doubt in the building. One possession. Block on one end. Dagger 3 on the other. That sequence summed up the entire night in one stretch of basketball. Indiana builds it, almost gives it away, and then the exact same player who couldn't stay on the floor the whole game because of a minute's restriction is the one who makes the final defensive stop and knocks down the shot that ends it. Seattle had every chance to steal this one late. Clark made sure they didn't get it. After the game, Clark kept coming back to trusting the recovery, trusting her legs after weeks away with that back injury. The rhythm looks all the way back now. No hesitation. No guarding herself out there. Head coach Stephanie White pointed to defense as the real growth, not just the scoring outburst everyone's talking about. Clark's block on Magbeger wasn't luck, it's a habit building fast. Next up is the New York Liberty, a real measuring stick game. Indiana walks in with momentum and MVP talk growing louder every week. This Fever team doesn't look like it's rebuilding anymore. It looks like it's arriving. Comment, CC Record Breaker, to show your love for Caitlin. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications as we bring you all the action and top stories here on Hoops Uncovered. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next one.